Am I under arrest?
Yeah, you failed to identify. Are you going to identify yourself, yes or no?
I'm still asking what crime have I committed.
I already told you, you're being suspicious. I've got suspicious behavior that you're doing, so at the very least, you have to identify yourself. Are you going to continue not to identify yourself?
Texas Penal Code 3802 says I can choose to identify myself.
Is that a yes or no?
Detained. And if I'm under arrest, then I have to identify
Okay, well, you're under arrest.
So I'm under arrest.
Are you going to identify yourself, yes or no?
What am I under arrest for?
Are you going to identify yourself, yes or no?
I'm just asking, what am I under arrest for?
Hello everyone, and welcome back to another video. This video is going to cover the event that led up to this particular incident here that put $10,000 into my pocket, along with 2 sergeants being demoted. And we're also going to cover my experience in jail, which is very interesting, so stay tuned for that. My sole purpose of going to Galveston was to take B-roll footage of the police station and also take video of the Galveston Fallen Officer Monument to confirm if there was a certain black detective that was left off. This information came from the Officer Down Memorial page, and the detective name is Charles Burrell. Detective Charles Burrell was in a restaurant at the corner of 28th and Church Street when 2 men approached him from behind. One of the men shot Detective Burrell in the neck, the bullet ranging upward through his jaw and lodging into his head. Both men were quickly captured and the weapon was recovered. Detective Burrell was taken to a local hospital where he was able to identify one of his assailants. The investigation into the shooting revealed that Detective Burrell, an African American, had been working to wipe out cocaine dealing in the segregated areas of Galveston. He had arrested his 2 assailants, both Caucasian males, several times in the recent past for drug dealing. Detective Burrell died from his wounds 1 week later on July 30th, 1914. Galveston's Fallen Officer Monument pretty much recognizes those who have died in the line of duty since 1873. So why was Detective Charles Burrell left off? I received this tip from a Reddit user and went to Galveston to investigate. I took some B-roll footage of the police station, and as I made my way to the Fallen Officer Monument, I was detained by former Archie Chapman for suspicious activity.
You're not going to identify yourself?
No.
Okay, go ahead and put your hands behind your back.
Not to come over here because we're going to jail.
Put your hands behind your back.
Can I put this down? I just don't want to drop it. I just want to put it down.
It's fine.
Okay.
Actually, put it right here. Okay, so at this time, I'm going to turn off your recording, okay?
Is there a reason why you're turning it on?
Well, you're going to go to jail, and so do you want to leave it running while you're in jail?
Yeah.
You want to leave it running the whole time?
Yes.
Okay. So I'm going to take this, and I'm going to put this in the back of the unit, okay? Do you have anything that's going to stick or poke me?
No. Am I under arrest?
Yeah, you failed to identify. Are you going to identify yourself, yes or no?
I'm still asking what crime have I committed.
I already told you, you're being suspicious. You're videotaping people's license plates.
I'm not videotaping.
Okay, because of that, I've got suspicious behavior that you're doing. So at the very least, you have to identify yourself. Are you going to continue not to identify yourself?
Texas Penal Code 3802 says I can choose to identify myself.
Is that a yes or no?
Detained. And if I'm under arrest, then I have to identify
Okay, well, you're under arrest.
So I'm under arrest.
Are you going to identify yourself, yes or no?
What am I under arrest for?
Are you going to identify yourself, yes or no?
I'm just asking, what am I under arrest for?
All right, well, listen, I'm going to turn this off. All right, because I'm not gonna waste your battery or anything like that.
It's okay. It's 6 hours battery.
It's documented.
Yes,
it's documented. I'm turning it off. I, Sergeant Chapman, is turning off your video camera. Okay.
NAGOA. Yeah, with you.
What's that?
Buddy over here.
At this point, I was unlawfully arrested and charged with failure to ID. Shortly after I was arrested, I was then taken to the Galveston County Intake Center, which happens to be part of the same building I was recording. I was then escorted by Archie Chapman into the intake center and was placed in a holding area. While waiting in the intake area, I was approached by Archie Chapman and former supervisor Gilbert Villarreal. They were pressing me for ID and I still would not give it to them. I asked over and over again, what was I being charged with? They both said failure to ID. In the back of my mind, I knew that the failure to ID is a secondary charge in this particular situation. After they both realized that I was not going to provide my ID, they both left to attend to other matters. Later on, I saw Archie Chapman with my video camera looking through the contents and saying, hey, this guy went to other PDs. We need to figure out who he is. I did confirm with the DA later on that Archie Chapman did not have a warrant to go through my camera, and he also did not have my consent, which made this a blatant violation of my Fourth Amendment right. After denying several requests and demands for my ID, They then gave up and booked me and my property under the name John Doe. This made the supervisor of the jail very upset. So upset that they didn't give me any food to eat that night. Somehow, some way, he took my keys and left with Archie Chapman and another deputy to go find my vehicle using the keep fob. And after they found my vehicle, they went inside and searched it and found my ID as shown in the dash cam footage. When they arrived back to the jail, they then showed me my ID while I was in the middle of being booked in and said, "This is what happens when you question authority," as he was referencing my bumper sticker on the side of my car. The sheriff deputies rebooked me under my real name and then took me behind these doors and placed me into the holding cell that had a better view of where the sheriff deputies were working behind his desk and answering the phones. I was in the holding cell with a handful of detainees who began to share why they were arrested, which ranged from aggravated assault, some had warrants, jaywalking, and failure to ID. Well, the failure to ID grabbed my attention, and I asked the guy, "Wait a minute, why were you charged with failure to ID?" He told me that he had warrants and that he lied about his identification. And I said, "Oh man, that sucks." And then that same guy asked me why I was there. And I told him, yeah, I was there for the same thing, failure to ID. And someone said, "Let me guess, you got warrants too?" I said, "No, I didn't have any warrants. I just didn't give my ID over to the officer." Well, everybody just started staring at me and they were like, "What? All you have to do is just give your ID? You don't have warrants and you wouldn't be here in the first place. Like, that's stupid. Why would you do that?" Some of the detainees said I would definitely be going to county and that the magistrate there has a certain reputation. That's when I began to talk about the failure to ID law and try to explain to them when and when it does not apply. And before I knew it, I had my very own master class explaining how the Texas ID law works. A few of the detainees were very interested and began to ask me questions, and which I responded with the appropriate answers. And in the end, I concluded that some of these guys just really didn't know their rights at all. While the discussions about the Fourth Amendment continued inside the holding cell, there was a whole new monster brewing outside the cell. I kept hearing sheriff deputies walk by saying, "Who is this guy? Where did he come from?" They keep calling about this guy. Well, it turns out that I had a few associates and a few subs calling into the jail on my behalf to make sure that I was okay. And that didn't sit well with the sheriff deputies. They began to make fun of me and mock me. And then one of the sheriff deputies moved me to a different cell because they didn't want my master class affecting their detainees. In that holding cell was another individual who was drunk and belligerent the whole night, yelling at the officers and cussing at them, and pretty much kept me up all night. But eventually that individual went to sleep and I finally went to sleep myself. Morning came and a sheriff deputy walked by all the cells to make sure everybody was awake because the magistrate was coming. The magistrate came and sat behind the desk, which was visible from all the cells. One by one, the sheriff deputies would let us out by the cells and we would sit down on these concrete benches and we would wait for the magistrate to call our names up. Once our name was called, we would appear before the desk in front of the magistrate where he would read the probable cause affidavit and determine if we were going to be sent to county or given a bond. Once they called my name, I got up and started to approach the desk. At that point, the area got entirely quiet, so quiet that you could probably hear a pin drop. Some of the sheriff deputies began to talk amongst themselves saying, "Hey, this is the guy that kept calling about. Who is this guy?" And as I looked off to the side, I could see that the night shift supervisor, Gilbert Villarreal, was still there, and he had this smirk on his face, shaking his head, probably thinking, you're gonna get what you deserve. After the magistrate read the probable cause affidavit, he then asked me why I didn't identify myself when the officer requested. I then replied saying, "Under Texas ID law, I'm not required to. The only requirements for me to identify is if I'm being lawfully arrested. If I'm being lawfully detained or a witness, I just can't lie about my identity." I also mentioned that the probable cause affidavit didn't mention any alleged crime or violation. And the magistrate says, "You do know that the law changes every 2 years. And I responded by saying, "Well, if the law hasn't changed in the last 6 months, then it's still the same." The magistrate agreed with me and granted me a $500 personal bond. I then turned around and purposely looked at Gilbert Villarreal, who was red in the face and fuming, which was very satisfying to see. And just like that, I walked out as a free man with a court date to return at a later time. I was then contacted by KHOU 11 News to do an interview in which I will link that article in the description box below. In that article, Michael Gray is a spokesperson for Galveston, and he said, His arrest wasn't a direct result of his photography, Grace said. He was arrested for failure to identify. He was arrested because he would not produce identification, and the legality of that is going to be determined through a Galveston Police Department internal investigation. I thought the courts determined that. Turner said he didn't identify himself because Texas law doesn't require a citizen to offer his name unless he's under arrest, a point confirmed by KHOU legal analyst. Texas has a statute that says very clearly you don't have to identify yourself to a police officer until and unless you're arrested, said Gerald Treese, the dean of South Texas College of Law. I think this photographer guy knew what he was doing. I do want to mention that the Texas failure to ID law has changed since then, so if you're going to exercise your rights, make sure you're up to date on any current changes in the laws. My failure to ID charge was thrown out and I did not have to reappear in Galveston. However, I still had some unfinished business, so I returned to confirm if the detective's name was left off the fallen officer monument statue, which was confirmed. My attorney, Kervin Althofer Jr., caught wind of the incident and sent a demand letter to the city of Galveston, which settled quickly for $20,000. I guess that's not bad for one night in jail. I do have other incidents that are very similar to this, so let me know if you guys want to hear more about those stories. Until then, let me know what you guys think about this video in the comments below.
Just for the long address is 401